The glass shatters against the wall, wine dripping like blood down the expensive wallpaper. The entire dining room falls silent. Daniel finally looks at me, really looks at me, for the first time all evening. "Emilia, what the hell?" he hisses, but I'm already grabbing my purse. His cousin Olivia's perfectly glossed mouth hangs open in shock. Everyone is frozen except for me. 20 minutes of being completely ignored, of watching my fiancé lean in close to his cousin, laughing at inside jokes, touching her arm while I sat beside him like a ghost. 20 minutes of being treated like the wallpaper in a house I was supposed to someday call my own. And now, something inside me has finally, irrevocably snapped. I can see the shock on my future mother-in-law's face as I pick up my plate, my half-eaten salmon still steaming. "Emilia, what are you?" Daniel finally notices me, his voice trailing off as I walk away without a word. The dining room feels impossibly long as I cross it, the weight of the silence pressing against my skin. I can hear the whispers starting already. Poor Daniel. She's so dramatic, always making a scene. What they don't see is the pattern. 3 family dinners this month, 3 nights of Daniel gravitating toward his perfect cousin, the golden child of the family with her law degree and her perfect life. 3 nights of me becoming less and less substantial, until tonight, when I simply ceased to exist. I spot his brother Michael at the far end of the room, sitting with the overflow relatives at the second table. He looks up, confused, as I approach with my plate. "Mind if I join you?" I ask, my voice steadier than I feel. Michael slides over, making room, a curious smile playing at his lips. "Not at all," he says, and pulls out a chair for me. I feel Daniel's eyes burning into my back as I sit down. This wasn't the plan. Good, reliable Emilia doesn't make scenes at family gatherings. Good, reliable Emilia doesn't walk away from her fiancé of 3 years to sit with his brother. But as I settle in, as Michael introduces me to his side of the family with a warmth I haven't felt all evening, I realise something is shifting. In the reflection of the window across from me, I can see Daniel standing now, his expression unreadable. His mother is tugging at his sleeve, whispering urgently. Olivia looks uncomfortable for the first time tonight. "So," Michael says, leaning in slightly, "want to tell me what that was about?" There's no judgment in his voice, just genuine curiosity. I take a deep breath and meet his eyes. "I think I just changed the rules of a game I didn't know we were playing," I reply. The corners of his mouth turn up. "About time someone did," he says and clinks his glass against mine. For the first time all evening, I smile. A real smile that reaches my eyes. And as I glance back at the main table, at Daniel's increasingly panicked expression, at Olivia's sudden interest in her plate, at the family matriarch's tight-lipped disapproval, I realise I've done something tonight that can't be undone. I've shown them who I really am, and I'm just getting started. I should have seen it coming, really. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through the 3 years of our relationship. But love has a way of blinding you to the things you don't want to see. And Daniel? Daniel was so good at making me feel special when it was just the 2 of us. "You're everything to me," he would whisper in the darkness of our bedroom, his hands tracing patterns on my skin. I've never felt this way about anyone. And I believed him. God, how I believed him. Then came the family gatherings. The first one should have been my warning. We'd been dating 6 months when Daniel finally introduced me to the Montgomery clan. Old Boston money, the kind that doesn't talk about how much they have, because everyone who matters already knows. His mother, Constance, had looked me up and down with the practiced assessment of someone appraising a counterfeit painting. "Emilia? That's an unusual name. Italian?" "My father's side, yes," I'd replied, already feeling the weight of disapproval. Was all she said, but that single syllable carried volumes. Daniel had squeezed my hand then, a reassurance. But he'd also stepped slightly away from me, creating distance. I didn't understand then what I was witnessing. The first small surrender. That night, I'd met Olivia for the first time. Daniel's cousin, though they'd grown up more like siblings. She'd swept into the room like she owned it, her blonde hair bouncing in perfect waves, her smile dazzling white against her summer tan. "Danny!" she'd squealed, throwing herself into his arms. Danny, not Daniel, as he'd always insisted I call him. Danny. I'd watched, something cold and slippery taking root in my stomach, as my boyfriend's entire demeanour changed. His shoulders relaxed, his smile widened, and suddenly he was a different person. A person I'd never met. "Liv!" He'd responded with equal enthusiasm, lifting her off her feet. "God, it's been too long." They'd fallen into an easy conversation full of references I couldn't follow, inside jokes I wasn't privy to, and shared memories that excluded me by their very nature. Daniel's hand had slipped from mine as he was drawn into Olivia's orbit, and I was left standing alone, clutching my wine glass like a shield. That should have been my warning, that first subtle abandonment. But I told myself it was natural. They were family. They had history. It didn't mean anything about us. The pattern established itself gradually after that. When it was just Daniel and me, everything was perfect. He was attentive, loving, present. But in family settings, he drifted away, pulled by the gravitational force of Olivia and the approval she represented. I became background noise, a prop in the performance of his life. Still, I stayed. I accepted his proposal when he asked a year later, slipping his grandmother's diamond onto my finger with promises of forever. I planned our life together, imagining the day when I would finally feel like I belonged. Tonight was supposed to be different. Our engagement dinner, officially celebrating what had been announced months ago, but waiting for his grandmother to return from her extended European tour. Tonight, I was supposed to be the centre of attention alongside Daniel. Tonight, I was supposed to finally be accepted. I'd spent hours getting ready, the dark green dress that matched my eyes, the pearl earrings that had been my mother's, my hair swept up to showcase the elegant line of my neck. When Daniel had seen me, his eyes had darkened with desire. "You look incredible," he'd murmured, pulling me close. "I'm the luckiest man alive." For a moment, I believed him again. The Montgomery estate was lit up like a Christmas display when we arrived, though it was early October. Classic New England grandeur. White columns, black shutters, manicured gardens now touched with autumn colours. Daniel's hand had been warm in mine as we walked up the stairs to the massive front door. "Ready?" he'd asked, and I'd nodded, foolishly thinking I was. The first hour had gone well enough. Cocktails in the sitting room, introductions to distant relatives I hadn't yet met, polite conversation about the wedding plans. Daniel stayed close, his hand at the small of my back, his attention firmly on me. Then Olivia arrived, fashionably late as always. "Sorry, everyone," she'd called out, sweeping into the room in a cloud of expensive perfume and designer silk. "Court ran late, and you know how Judge Harrison can be when he gets on his soapbox." Every eye in the room had turned to her, including Daniel's, including my fiancé's. And just like that, I felt him start to slip away. By the time we moved to the dining room, the transformation was complete. I was seated beside Daniel, yes, but he might as well have been across the room. He turned his body toward Olivia, who was placed directly across from him. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and knowing looks. I tried to participate. I asked questions. I offered comments. But each attempt was met with brief acknowledgement before they turned back to each other. "Remember that summer in the Hamptons?" Olivia was saying, leaning forward, her perfect cleavage on display. "When we stole Uncle William's boat?" Daniel laughed, the sound rich and full in a way I rarely heard. "God, we nearly drowned. the look on his face when we came back soaking wet. And we blamed it on the Anderson kids next door, Olivia finished, reaching across to touch Daniel's arm. I watched his hand turn, catching hers briefly before they both pulled away, the touch lasting a heartbeat too long to be casual. Something twisted in my chest, not jealousy exactly, but a terrible clarity. As I sat there, becoming increasingly invisible, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it. This was my future. Always on the outside looking in, always second best to the golden cousin, always watching my husband turn toward another woman with a light in his eyes that should be reserved for me. 20 minutes of this. 20 minutes of complete invisibility. And then something inside me broke. I reached for my wine glass, the crystal cool and heavy in my hand. I stared at the deep red liquid, the colour of broken promises. And in one fluid motion, I stood and hurled it against the wall. The sound of shattering glass still echoes in my ears as I take my seat next to Michael. The table of lesser Montgomerys welcomes me with curious smiles and raised eyebrows. This table lacks the polished mahogany and elaborate centrepiece of the main table. Instead, it's covered with a simple white tablecloth and decorated with more modest floral arrangements, clearly designated for those not important enough to sit with the family matriarch. "Everyone, this is Emilia, Daniel's fiancée," Michael announces, his voice carrying just enough to be heard at the main table. "Former fiancée, perhaps?" An elderly woman with kind eyes asks, not unkindly. I touch the diamond ring still on my finger. "That remains to be seen," I reply, surprising myself with my candour. Michael lets out a low whistle. "Bold move, Emilia. I don't think anyone's ever walked away from the main table before. It's practically Montgomery treason." "First time for everything," I say, taking a bite of my salmon. It tastes better here somehow. I can feel Daniel's eyes on me burning with a mixture of anger and confusion. Good. Let him feel something. Let him wonder. Let him chase for once. A young woman across from me leans forward. "I'm Rebecca, Michael's girlfriend," she says, "and can I just say, that was magnificent." I feel a rush of gratitude toward this stranger. "Thanks, it wasn't planned." "The best rebellions never are," she says with a conspiratorial wink. The conversation at this table flows easily, without the suffocating pretension of the main gathering. These people, the cousins twice removed, the in-laws by marriage, the childhood friends, close enough to be invited, but not important enough to sit with the core family. These people are real in a way the others aren't. "So, tell us, Emilia," says a man in his 50s who introduces himself as Daniel's Uncle Robert, Constance's brother-in-law from her first marriage, he explains, which apparently relegates him to second table status. "How did you and Daniel meet? I don't believe I've heard the story." It strikes me that after 3 years together and months of engagement, there are still family members who know nothing about me. I've been kept separate, compartmentalised. "We met at a charity auction," I explain. "I was working the event, I'm an event coordinator, and Daniel was there representing his firm." "Ah, so you're a working girl," says the elderly woman. "Aunt Judith, I learn." The way she says it doesn't sound derogatory, merely factual, different from how Constance had said it when she first learned what I did for a living. "An event planner? How creative. I always tell my friends it's important to have a hobby." "I am," I confirm. "I love what I do." "Good for you," Aunt Judith nods approvingly. "Too many people in this family think money appears by magic. No concept of actual work." I glance toward the main table. Daniel is now engaged in what appears to be a heated, whispered conversation with his mother, while Olivia looks on with a slight smirk playing at her lips. His grandmother, the family matriarch Eleanor Montgomery, watches the scene with narrowed eyes, her disapproval palpable even from across the room. "Don't mind them," Michael says, following my gaze. "They're just not used to anyone disrupting their perfect little tableau." "Michael, Rebecca admonishes gently. Be nice. I, being nice, he replies with a grin. If I weren't being nice, I'd mention how Daniel hasn't been able to make a single decision without grandmother's and mother's approval since he was 12 years old. I turn to him surprised. What do you mean? Michael takes a sip of his wine. Let's just say there's a reason I'm at this table and not that one. Freedom comes with a price in this family. I want to ask more, but I'm interrupted by the arrival of Daniel himself, who has apparently worked up the courage to approach our table. He stands awkwardly behind my chair, tension radiating from him in waves. Emilia, he says stiffly, can we talk? Privately? All conversation at the table stops. I can feel everyone watching, waiting to see what I'll do. 3 years ago, I would have immediately stood up, apologised for causing a scene, and followed him out like an obedient puppy. 1 year ago, I would have hesitated, but ultimately complied, not wanting to make things worse. Even an hour ago, I might have given in. But not now, not after everything. Actually, Daniel, I say, my voice steady, I am in the middle of a lovely conversation with your family. Anything you need to say to me can be said right here. His face flushes. Daniel hates confrontation, hates anything that disrupts his carefully controlled image. This isn't appropriate, he hisses. Neither was ignoring me for your cousin all evening, I reply coolly. Yet somehow, you managed that just fine. A few people at the table suppress smiles. Michael doesn't bother hiding his. You're being childish, Daniel says, his voice dropping even lower. This is embarrassing. For whom, exactly, I ask? Because I'm feeling better than I have all night. He runs a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a sure sign of his agitation. My grandmother wants to speak with you. The table falls silent. Even Michael looks surprised. Eleanor Montgomery, at 87, still rules the family with an iron fist. Her approval determines everything from business decisions to marriage partners. The Montgomery fortune, old money from shipping, newer money from tech investments, flows according to her whims, and she rarely speaks directly to outsiders. Why, I ask, genuinely curious. Daniel looks exasperated. Because she asked to, Emilia, that's reason enough. It wasn't reason enough for you to introduce me to her properly when we arrived, I point out. She barely acknowledged me. That's just how she is, he defends weakly. And this is just how I am, I counter. Tell your grandmother I'll be happy to speak with her after dinner. Someone at the table gasps softly. No one refuses Eleanor Montgomery. No one makes her wait. Daniel's face pales. Emilia, please, don't make this worse. For the first time, I see fear in his eyes. Not anger at my behaviour, not embarrassment, genuine fear. And suddenly, everything clicks into place. This isn't just about tonight. This isn't just about Olivia. This is about control, about the invisible strings that have been pulling at Daniel his entire life. Strings I never fully saw until now. I soften slightly. 5 minutes, I concede. But then I'm coming back here. Relief floods his features. Thank you, he says, pulling out my chair. As I stand, Michael catches my eye. Remember who you are, he says quietly. It's such an odd thing to say to someone he's just met, but it resonates deeply. Who am I? Not the accommodating shadow I've allowed myself to become in this family. Not the afterthought to Olivia's main event. Daniel leads me across the dining room, his hand hovering near the small of my back, but not quite touching it. We pass Olivia, who watches with undisguised interest. I hold her gaze until she looks away first. Eleanor Montgomery sits at the head of the table like a queen on her throne. White hair, perfectly coiffed, irascible, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat, posture rigid despite her age. She dismisses the relatives seated near her with a flick of her fingers, creating privacy in the crowded room. Sit, she commands, indicating the chair beside her that Daniel's father hastily vacates. I comply, smoothing my dress as I take my seat. Daniel hovers uncertainly until his grandmother shoots him a look. "Leave us," she says to him. He hesitates only a moment before retreating, leaving me alone with the Montgomery matriarch. Eleanor studies me with piercing blue eyes that have likely seen through countless business adversaries and social climbers. I force myself to meet her gaze steadily. "You caused quite a disturbance," she says finally, her Boston Brahmin accent making the words sound like a pronouncement from on high. "I did," I acknowledge. "You embarrassed my grandson." "He embarrassed me first," I reply, then add, "Ma'am?" To my surprise, the corners of her mouth twitch slightly. Directness. Interesting. Not a quality the women in this family typically possess. I say nothing, waiting. "Why did you do it?" she asks. The glass, the scene, all of it. I consider my answer carefully. This woman holds my future with Daniel in her hands, whether I like it or not. But I'm done pretending. "Because I was invisible," I say simply, "because your grandson has a pattern of making me invisible when his cousin is around. Because 3 years into our relationship, I still don't feel like I belong here." "And do you want to belong here, Miss Russo?" Her use of my last name surprises me. She's been paying more attention than I realised. "I want to belong with Daniel," I answer truthfully. "The family is complicated." She actually smiles at that, a small, tight expression that barely disturbs her perfectly applied lipstick. "Indeed, it is." She studies me for another long moment. "You know, I had reservations when Daniel announced your engagement." "I'm aware," I say dryly, "but perhaps I misjudged you. There's more steel in your spine than I anticipated. From Eleanor Montgomery, this is practically a declaration of love. I don't know how to respond." "My daughter-in-law believes you're after Daniel's money," she continues bluntly. "I have my own career. I've never asked Daniel for money." "Yes, I've looked into your business. Quite impressive for someone your age. Self-made, I believe." The fact that she's investigated me is both unsettling and oddly flattering. "Yes, my parents were teachers. They left me their house when they died, but not much else." She nods as if confirming something to herself. "And what do you make of Olivia?" The question catches me off guard with its directness. Eleanor Montgomery doesn't seem the type for girl talk or gossip. "She's important to Daniel," I say carefully. "That's not what I asked." I take a deep breath. "I think she enjoys the power she has over him. I think their relationship crosses boundaries sometimes, and I think she's never had to work for anything in her life." I expect outrage. Olivia's family, after all, while I'm still an outsider. Instead, Eleanor lets out a short, sharp laugh. "Perceptive," she says. "Olivia has been the golden child of this family since she was born. My son and his wife have practically adopted her as their own. It's created an unhealthy dynamic." I'm stunned by this admission. "Why are you telling me this?" Eleanor's eyes, sharp as ever, fix on mine. "Because I've been watching you tonight, Emilia Rousseau, before the incident. I saw how they treated you. I saw how you endured it. And then I saw you break." She leans slightly closer. "This family breaks people. It breaks them. Or it turns them into something cold and hard and unrecognizable. It very nearly broke Michael before he escaped. And it's been working on Daniel since he was a child." I glance across the room at Daniel, who's watching us anxiously. "I don't want to break him," I say softly. "I just want him to see me." "Perhaps breaking is exactly what he needs," Eleanor replies enigmatically. She straightens up, signalling our conversation is coming to an end. "You may return to Michael's table now, if that's what you wish." As I stand, she adds, "Oh, and Miss Russo, that ring you're wearing belonged to my mother. If you decide to keep it, make sure the man is worthy of you wearing it." With that parting shot, she turns away, effectively dismissing me. I walk back across the dining room, feeling the weight of every gaze. Daniel steps forward to intercept me, question in his eyes. I shake my head slightly and continue past him, back to the table where Michael and the others wait. "Well," Michael asks as I sit down, "has the Queen issued her decree?" "I think," I say slowly, "she just gave me her blessing to blow up your family's entire power structure." Michael's eyes widen, then he throws his head back and laughs. "Now, that," he says, raising his glass, "is something I'd like to see." As we clink glasses, I catch Daniel's gaze across the room. He looks lost, standing between the two tables, belonging fully to neither. For the first time tonight, I feel a pang of sympathy for him, but not enough to go back. Not yet. Not until something changes. The evening continues, dessert is served, and I find myself laughing genuinely with Michael and his group. I learn more about the Montgomery family dynamics in 1 hour than I have in 3 years with Daniel. I learn about the expectations, the conditions placed on affection, the subtle manipulations, and I start to understand why Daniel is the way he is. As coffee is being served, my phone buzzes with a text. From Daniel, "Can we please talk? Really talk? Just us?" I look up and find him watching me, his expression a mixture of confusion, hurt, and something that might be dawning realization. "Trouble in paradise?" Michael asks, noticing the text. "Maybe," I reply, "or maybe the beginning of something honest for the first time?" I stand up, smoothing my dress. "Thank you all for your company tonight," I say to the table. "It's been illuminating." As I prepare to finally face Daniel, to have the conversation we should have had years ago, Michael catches my hand. "Whatever happens," he says, "you've earned your place at either table now. Remember that." I squeeze his hand in thanks and turn to walk toward Daniel, my head high, my heart pounding. The real battle, I realise, is just beginning. Daniel leads me to the Montgomery Estates Library, a room designed more for show than actual reading, with leather-bound first editions arranged by colour rather than subject. The heavy oak door closes behind us with a soft click, sealing us into a bubble of tense silence. He paces in front of the ornate fireplace, running his hands through his hair until it stands up in dishevelled spikes, so unlike his usual polished appearance. I remain by the door, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, he stops and faces me. "What the hell was that, Emilia?" "Which part?" I ask calmly. "The wine glass, walking away from you, or having an actual conversation with your grandmother?" "All of it," he explodes. "You humiliated me in front of my entire family." "Interesting," I say, my voice deceptively soft. "That's your takeaway from tonight? That I humiliated you? Not that you spent the entire evening acting like I didn't exist?" He has the grace to look slightly ashamed, but quickly rallies. "I was just catching up with Olivia. She's family, Emilia. You're being paranoid." "No, Daniel, I'm being clear-eyed for the first time in 3 years. I step further into the room, my heels silent on the plush Persian carpet. Tonight wasn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. Every time your cousin is around, I become invisible. Every time your mother disapproves of something, you distance yourself from me. Every time there's a conflict between what I need and what your family wants, guess who loses?" He opens his mouth to protest, but I hold up my hand. "And you know what? I accepted it. I told myself it was temporary, that once we were married, things would change, that eventually I'd earn my place in your world." I laugh bitterly. What a fool I've been. Daniel's face softens. "You're not a fool, Em. I love you." Do you, I challenge, or do you love the idea of me? The version of me that fits neatly into your life without disrupting anything? Because that's not who I am, Daniel. That's never who I was. He steps toward me, reaching for my hands. I let him take them, searching his face for the man I fell in love with. I do love you, he insists. Tonight was... I don't know what happened tonight. I got caught up. Liv and I have history, you know that. History, I repeat flatly. Is that what we're calling it now? Something flickers across his face. Guilt, perhaps. But it's gone too quickly for me to be sure. What's that supposed to mean? He asks defensively. I pull my hands from his grasp. It means I'm not blind, Daniel. I see how she looks at you, how you look at her, the inside jokes, the lingering touches, the way you light up when she enters a room. She's my cousin, he says, but there's a hollowness to the words. Yes, your cousin who you were in love with long before you met me. The accusation hangs in the air between us. Daniel's face drains of colour. That's not... We were never, he stammers. Save it, I cut him off. Your grandmother told me everything. This is a bluff, but I can see from his reaction that I've hit a nerve. Eleanor didn't have to spell it out for me. The pieces were all there, the unnatural closeness, the family's strange indulgence of their relationship, the way everyone pretended not to notice. What exactly did she tell you? Daniel asks, his voice barely above a whisper. I stay silent, letting him fill in the blanks himself. He sinks into a leather armchair, suddenly looking exhausted. It wasn't like that, he says finally. Not exactly. Then what was it like, Daniel? Explain it to me. I remain standing, unwilling to give him the comfort of a shared conversation space. He stares at his hands. Olivia and I, we grew up together, more like siblings than cousins. But then, when we were teenagers, things got, complicated. Did you sleep with her? The question is blunt, cutting through his careful euphemisms. No, he protests, looking genuinely horrified. God, no. But there were feelings on both sides. Nothing ever happened physically, but emotionally. You were involved, I finish for him. He nods miserably. It was intense for a while. Secret notes, plans to run away together after high school. Stupid teenage romance stuff, except she was your cousin. The family found out, he continues. My parents, her parents. There was a huge blow-up. Grandmother stepped in. She sent Olivia to boarding school in Switzerland, me to a different college than I'd planned. We were kept apart for years. I processed this information, thinking of the golden cousin who still holds such power over him. So, what changed? Daniel looks up at me. We grew up, realised it was just a phase. By the time we were allowed in the same room again, we'd both moved on. It became this unspoken thing. Nobody in the family acknowledges it ever happened. Except, you never really moved on, did you? I ask softly. Not completely. He doesn't answer immediately, which is answer enough. And then you met me, I prompt. And then I met you, he echoes. And you were amazing, Emilia. Everything I didn't know I needed, real and grounded and so different from anyone in my world. But Olivia was still there, in the background, the road not taken. He winces. That makes it sound so calculated. Wasn't it? I ask. Maybe not consciously, but some part of you kept me and your family separate. Some part of you maintained that special connection with Olivia. Some part of you never fully committed to us. Daniel stands suddenly agitated. That's not fair. I asked you to marry me. I gave you my grandmother's ring. A ring, I say, twisting it on my finger. But not your whole heart. Never that. He stares at me, stricken. What are you saying? I'm saying I deserve more than being second choice, Daniel. I deserve more than being invisible at my own engagement dinner. You're not second choice, he insists, but his voice lacks conviction. I move to the window, looking out at the manicured grounds of the Montgomery estate, illuminated by strategic landscape lighting. Such a perfect facade, hiding so many cracks beneath the surface. Your grandmother asked me an interesting question tonight, I say without turning around. She asked if I wanted to belong here, with your family. And what did you say? Daniel asks, his voice tight. I told her I wanted to belong with you. I turn to face him, but now I'm wondering if that's even possible, if it ever was. He crosses the room to me, taking my face in his hands. It is possible. I love you, Emilia, not Olivia. You... I search his eyes, looking for the truth. Then prove it. How? He asks desperately. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. And there it is, the crux of our problem. Daniel has spent his life being told what to do. By his parents, by his grandmother, even by Olivia in her way. He's never had to figure it out for himself. That's just it, Daniel. I shouldn't have to tell you. You should know. I gently remove his hands from my face. And the fact that you don't, that tells me everything. A knock at the door interrupts us. Michael pokes his head in, his expression apologetic. Sorry to intrude, but Grandmother's asking for both of you. Apparently, there's going to be some kind of formal announcement about the wedding. Daniel looks at me in panic. Emilia, please, we can work this out. Don't do anything rash. The irony of him asking me not to be rash after I've endured 3 years of emotional neglect is not lost on me. But I simply nod. Let's not keep your grandmother waiting, I say, moving toward the door. Daniel catches my arm. Are we okay? He whispers urgently. I look at him. This man I've loved, this man who's never been fully mine, and I don't answer. I simply walk past Michael and back toward the dining room, where the family has gathered for coffee and the anticipated announcement. The main dining table has been cleared, and Eleanor sits at its head like a queen holding court. Constance hovers at her right hand, whispering urgently, but the matriarch waves her away as she sees us enter. Ah, there you are, she says. Come, sit. Daniel guides me to the 2 empty chairs directly across from Olivia, who watches us with undisguised curiosity. I notice her perfectly manicured nails drumming nervously on the table. Eleanor taps her water glass with a silver spoon, commanding silence. All conversations cease immediately. As you know, she begins, we are gathered tonight to celebrate the engagement of my grandson Daniel to Miss Emilia Russo. Polite applause ripples through the room. I feel Daniel's hand find mine under the table, squeezing it tightly. Too tightly. In keeping with Montgomery tradition, Eleanor continues, I have a special announcement regarding their future. Daniel tenses beside me. This is clearly not part of the evening's planned script. The young couple will be moving into the Gardner Street property after their wedding, Eleanor declares. It will be my gift to them. Murmurs of surprise fill the room. The Gardner Street house is one of the most valuable properties in the Montgomery portfolio, a historic brownstone in the heart of Boston. Furthermore, Eleanor adds, I have decided to appoint Daniel as the head of the Montgomery Foundation, effective immediately. Now the murmurs turn to gasps. The foundation controls much of the family's charitable giving and, more importantly, wields significant social influence. Daniel's grip on my hand becomes painful. I look at him and see naked shock on his face. This is not something he knew was coming. Grandmother, he begins hesitantly. I'm honoured, but... No buts, Eleanor cuts him off firmly. It's decided. You and your bride will take on these responsibilities together. It's time for new blood at the foundation. My gaze shifts to Constance, whose face has turned an alarming shade of red. Next to her, Daniel's father looks equally displeased. And Olivia stares at me with undisguised hostility. Because I suddenly understand what's happening. The foundation position was meant for her. The Gardner Street house was probably promised to her as well. Eleanor is deliberately bypassing the golden child in favour of Daniel, and, by extension, me. It's a power play, pure and simple, and we're the pawns. A toast, Eleanor commands, raising her glass, to Daniel and Emilia and to the future of the Montgomery family. Everyone raises their glasses automatically, conditioned to follow Eleanor's lead. Daniel is smiling now, the earlier tension in the library seemingly forgotten as he basks in his grandmother's unprecedented favour. "Thank you, grandmother," he says, voice full of emotion. "This means everything to me, to us." He turns to me expecting shared jubilation, but all I feel is a deep, unsettling clarity. This is what our life would be. Decisions made for us, gifts with invisible strings attached, power bestowed and withdrawn at the whim of an old woman, playing chess with human lives. "Daniel," I say quietly, "can I speak with you? Privately?" But Eleanor intercepts. "Whatever you need to discuss can wait, my dear. Tonight is for celebration." Her eyes meet mine and I see the challenge there. The test. Will I continue to disrupt, or will I fall in line now that the rewards are being dangled before me? Daniel squeezes my hand again, this time in warning. "Of course, grandmother," he says smoothly. "Emilia and I are overwhelmed by your generosity." I look around the table at the faces of the Montgomery clan, at Constance's barely concealed fury, at Olivia's hurt and betrayal, at Michael's unexpected compassion, and finally at Eleanor's calculating satisfaction. They're all playing roles in a drama that's been running for generations, and now they've written a part for me. "Actually," I say, my voice stronger than I expected, I do have something to say." Daniel's smile freezes. Eleanor's eyebrows lift slightly in either surprise or approval. It's impossible to tell which. I stand, removing my hand from Daniel's desperate grasp. "I want to thank you all for including me in your family dinner tonight," I begin formally. "It's been educational." I reach for my champagne glass, raising it in a mock toast. "To the Montgomerys, masters of the elegant power play and emotional manipulation. I've learned more about how this family operates in one evening than in 3 years of dating Daniel." Shocked silence greets my words. Daniel tugs at my sleeve, trying to pull me back into my seat, but I step away from his reach. "Mrs. Montgomery," I address Eleanor directly, "your offer is incredibly generous. But I have to wonder what it will cost us." "Emilia," Daniel hisses in horror. Eleanor's expression doesn't change, but something like respect flickers in her eyes. "An interesting question, Miss Russo. What do you believe it might cost you?" "Our autonomy," I answer without hesitation. "Our ability to make our own choices. And, eventually, our souls." I twist the diamond ring off my finger and place it gently on the table. I can't live like this, Daniel. And if you're honest with yourself, neither can you." The room has gone so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Daniel stares at the ring, then at me, devastation written across his features. "You don't mean that," he says hoarsely. "You're just upset about tonight." "It's not just tonight," I interrupt gently. "It's every night, every family gathering, every time you choose them and their expectations over us." I turn to the assembled family members who watch this unfolding drama with expressions ranging from horror to fascination. "I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening," I say with as much dignity as I can muster. "I'll find my own way home." As I turn to leave, Olivia suddenly stands. "Wait." Everyone's attention swivels to her. She looks uncertain, vulnerable in a way I've never seen before. "I need to say something too," she says, her voice quavering slightly. "Since We're all being honest tonight. Daniel goes rigid beside me. Liv, don't. No, Danny, it's time. She takes a deep breath. Emilia's right. About all of it. The way this family operates, the manipulation, the invisible strings. She looks directly at me. And about Daniel and me. A collective intake of breath around the table tells me that while everyone knows, no one ever speaks of it. We were in love once, Olivia continues, tears forming in her eyes. Or thought we were. And then it was forbidden. And that just made it more intense, more secret. But the family separated us and we moved on. At least I did. She looks at Daniel, whose face has gone pale. You never did, though, did you, Danny? Not really. Olivia, please, Constance interjects. This is hardly the time or place. It's exactly the time and place, Olivia cuts her off. Because Emilia deserves to know why I've been so awful to her, why I've deliberately come between them every chance I got. She turns back to me. It wasn't because I still want him, Emilia. It's because I needed to prove to myself that I had that power, that I hadn't lost everything when the family tore us apart. The revelation hangs in the air, stunning in its rawness. But watching you tonight, she continues, watching you refuse to be invisible, it made me realise what I've become, what we've all become in this toxic family dynamic. She reaches across the table toward me, an unexpected gesture of solidarity. You're right to walk away, and if you're smart, Daniel, you'll go with her. Daniel looks shell-shocked, caught between his past and his present, between family obligation and the woman he claims to love. Eleanor watches it all with inscrutable eyes, seemingly unmoved by the emotional confessions unfolding at her table. Well, she says finally, this has certainly been an eventful evening. I wait for Daniel to speak, to make a choice. Everyone at the table seems to be holding their breath. He looks at the ring I've placed on the table, then at me, then at his grandmother. The struggle plays out visibly on his face, years of conditioning battling against the possibility of freedom. I can't lose you, Emilia, he says at last, but I don't know how to be who you need me to be. The raw honesty of this admission touches me more than any grand gesture could have. For perhaps the first time since I've known him, Daniel is being completely authentic. Then, figure it out, I say simply. Away from here, away from them. Figure out who Daniel Montgomery is when he's not being the perfect grandson, the dutiful son, the family success story. I walk to the door, then pause and look back. If you decide that's what you want, to discover who you really are, you know where to find me. But I won't wait forever. With that, I walk out of the Montgomery dining room, down the grand hallway, and out into the cool October night. I don't look back to see if Daniel follows. This is his choice to make, not mine. Michael appears beside me as I reach the driveway, car keys in hand. Need a ride? I nod gratefully. You're not worried about the family fallout? He shrugs. I survived leaving once. I can survive it again. He glances back at the house. Besides, someone should make sure you get home safely. Daniel's a bit preoccupied at the moment. As we drive away from the Montgomery estate, I ask the question that's been bothering me all evening. Your grandmother, was she testing me tonight? With the announcement, the gifts? Michael considers this as he navigates the winding roads. Grandmother doesn't test people, Emilia. She breaks them to see what they're made of. And if they don't break? A smile plays at his lips. Then she either destroys them completely or brings them into the fold. There's no middle ground with Eleanor Montgomery. I lean back against the headrest, emotionally exhausted. What do you think will happen now? With Daniel? Michael shrugs. That depends on whether he finds his spine. He's never stood up to them before, but he's never had a reason as compelling as you. His words warm me, but I remain realistic. I meant what I said. I won't wait forever. I don't think you'll have to, Michael says cryptically. When we arrive at my apartment building, he hands me a business card. My private number. If you need anything at all, call me. I look at the card, then at him. Why are you being so kind to me? You barely know me. Michael's smile turns sad. Let's just say I recognise a fellow survivor when I see one. He waits until I'm safely inside before driving away. My apartment feels both foreign and comforting after the high drama of the evening. My books, my photographs, my life that exists completely separate from the Montgomery dynasty. I kick off my heels, pour myself a glass of wine and curl up on my sofa, wondering if I've just made the biggest mistake of my life or the best decision I've ever made. My phone buzzes with a text from Daniel. Can I come over? Please? I stare at the screen, weighing my options. Before I can reply, another text comes through. I left. I told them I needed time to think. Grandmother is furious. Mother is in tears. Olivia actually hugged me, said she was sorry. A moment later, a third text. I don't know what I'm doing, Em, but I know I can't lose you. I type back a single word, come. As I wait for him to arrive, I gaze out my window at the Boston skyline, lights twinkling against the dark sky. Tonight has changed everything, yet resolved nothing. Daniel and I have miles to go before we'll know if what we have can survive outside the shadow of his family. But for the first time since I hurled that wine glass against the wall, I feel something like hope. My doorbell rings 30 minutes later. I take a deep breath and move to answer it, ready to face whatever comes next. But when I open the door, it's not Daniel standing there. It's Eleanor Montgomery. Miss Rousseau, she says, looking impossibly regal, despite the late hour. May I come in? There are some things about my grandson you need to know before he arrives. And as I step aside to let the Montgomery matriarch into my modest apartment, I realise the game is far from over. In fact, it's only just begun.